welcome to the United Kingdom section สวัสดีครับวันนี้ผมสุกฤต ปัญจพันพงศ์นะครับก็จะมาอยู่ที่ห้องสหราชอาณาจักรนะครับพร้อมกับคุณแอนนาแฮมลินนะครับจาก Time Out นะครับ Hi Anna, welcome you to the UK section. So as you know that we have global sections around the world and we are in the United Kingdom, which is your countries.And I also lived there for the last 13 years as well. So I know you for a long time as well. So it's my privilege to see you again and that you can share something that would be benefit for us as a Thai who want to work in the UK. Maybe we can know some tips or maybe we can understand more about the United Kingdom trend of the leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to see you again. I know it's been a while, but we did work together at TripAdvisor for quite a few years. So I'm really happy to be a part of this today. So yes, my name is Anna Hamlin. I'm currently the HR director for Time Out Group. Time Out Group is a global media and hospitality business. It inspires and enables people to go out and explore the best of the city. So you may know the media side of the business, which is the website, and we also have a magazine in some cities. And we now have a hospitality division where we have food markets that we've rolled out across a number of cities in the US, with our flagship market being in Lisbon. And we recently opened one in Dubai as well. So, quite different industries, but they partner really well together. So the markets are curated by our, experienced, very credible journalists that work for the Time Out brand. So I've been at Time Out now for 5 years. Prior to that, as I mentioned before, working with Sukkit at TripAdvisor, which is a travel review site. I was also there for about 5.5 years, working regionally for the EMEA region, supporting HR there, but also in global roles. So we did a few acquisitions and I helped to business partner with some of those businesses that we acquired. Prior to that, I've also worked at ITV, which is a television broadcaster in the UK. That was a UK-based role. So I kind of expanded my remit as I've gone through the years. And I've also worked at the BBC as well, prior to ITV. So that was another broadcaster, which you may have heard of. So, yeah.
Wow. I know you with TripAdvisor. I didn't know your past experience that so many worldwide brands like BBC, ITV as well. Okay. I think the good thing is we can just go to your slide. Yeah, because I think and now you have quite a few slides that it would be good for us to know. Yeah, let me jump into that.
Okay. So yeah, basically, I wanted to talk about a few things today, and obviously the pandemic has been a massive, had a massive impact for lots of businesses across the world, understandably, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how it's impacted us at Time Out and the approach that we've taken to dealing with it, and kind of the working world as we're coming out of it, hopefully. So the first point really is I wanted to talk about how we've decided to adopt a hybrid model of working, and part of that decision came from obviously having to remote work. So when we went into lockdown in the UK, it was a full lockdown. Nothing was open, so everyone was required to work from home. Luckily, for most of our media business, people could very effectively still do their roles from home. Obviously, on the market side, it's a hospitality business, people couldn't work. So we utilised furlough schemes and things like that. The whole remote working, although I'm a big advocate for giving people flexibility and working from home, because it's a great benefit to give people that doesn't really cost you anything. This was very much a reactive strategy rather than something that we planned, which it was for everybody. You just had to kind of deal with the pandemic. So like I said, we did have to resort to using some government schemes such as furlough. We had managers take pay cuts to try and save some money, because media and hospitality were industries that were affected massively. Obviously, time out, we write about going out, doing things, and no one could go and do anything. So, we really had to shift our business proposition. And one of the things, well, the main thing that we did was pivot to time in. So rather than writing about what you can do when you go out, it was, good walks to do in your area, or what can we watch on Netflix. So it was a real shift, but it was something that we had to do to continue to keep going, really. But as I said, a lot of the media business were remote working, and we had to very, very quickly task or give the skills to our managers of how to manage remotely, because you're not having that day-to-day contact with your teams anymore. And this is where trust becomes such a key element. Some managers are better at trusting their teams than others. What they look for is productivity rather than, I can see that this person hasn't been logged on, or they're not active on their chat messenger. So automatically they think, oh, are they working? That's not really worked well. That's where the trust comes into it. As long as people are performing, we have to trust that even though they're at home, and I'm sure there's lots of distractions, particularly at the start where there's kids, your partner's at home as well. Everyone was going through the same thing, but as long as the work was getting done, that was the main thing. So my team worked really hard in working with managers to try and, like I say, give them the skills to manage remotely. So we did weekly emails with top tips for managers on how to work remotely. We also focused on things like well-being, so mental health became really, really important, because obviously for some people who were maybe not in a great setup at home, no space, or lack of proper working equipment, that was tough. People who were isolated, really hard as well. So we did a lot on well-being and making sure managers were equipped to check in with people in the right way. And also keeping up morale. Like, we wanted, it's tough. No one really knew what was going on in this lockdown world, when we were going to come out of it. Yeah. So being able to still create the momentum of, we are still here for a reason and there's stuff to be doing, was really important as well. We also created a portal for our employees we called it Lockdown Lowdown. And basically it was a plethora of resources for people, not just our active staff, but also our furloughed staff as well, who could go on and look at things like, well-being, financial resources, training. There was a lot of free training being given out at the time. So we wanted to put that in a place where it was easily accessible to our staff, which again helped with people being engaged and kind of wanting to log on every day. So I think where it worked really well was, like I say, those managers that could show they trusted their teams. So they weren't clock watching, they were just looking for results, could see that the productivity was still there regardless of the traditional kind of 9 to 5 hours being worked. A lot of people, because they had kids at home, they're trying to homeschool, they were maybe not doing, like I say, the traditional 9 to 5. They were doing bits during the day where they could, and then maybe logging on in the evening, but ultimately they were getting their work done in whatever way suited them. And that's where relationships were really successful, when managers were aware that that was a situation and they were supportive of it. where people were getting a bit like panicky about, oh, I can see they're not online. That just didn't instill a good.
Is that something that happened? I mean, it's a bit quirky to see manager to look after you every single minute like that. But is that something normal nowadays for trend in UK? Or I know that not everyone want to do that. But is that something that people think in their mind, like when you work online, even yourself, like, should I be online or should I be away? Situation status on the something like that. Yeah.
I think people are conscious of it, but I all think it depends on who your manager is. So if your manager has given you that trust and the flexibility, then you don't really think about it. You work in the way that suits you best. Some people can only focus on things where they don't have their emails popping up, they don't have chat on, so they turn it off. And that's okay because they are focusing on a project. Some employees may feel a little bit uncomfortable doing that because they think it sends an instant message to their manager saying, I'm not working, I'm doing other things because I've turned my status off. But that's where it's so important for managers to set the boundaries and say, look, you know, some may say, look, I want you online between 9 and 1 because I know there's certain projects going on. I need to be able to connect with you. Others were doing kind of 10-minute check-ins every morning. Just say, look, this is kind of what we're all working on. A bit of social interaction as well was really key because obviously being locked down, you couldn't really see anyone. So that kind of gave that element as well. But it kind of worked well where managers were just letting their teams do the work in the way that they saw fit. But yes, I do think that some employees who didn't have best relationships with the managers were very conscious that they needed to be seen, to be logged in, which, you know, doesn't always bring out the best in that individual. So I think where I've seen it work well is flexibility is so key, and just being able to trust people that they know how to get their work done and they will get it done. So because we had this very long period of remote working, I think we actually had people out of the office from the March until August. This gave us a lot of food for thought, about what we did next in terms of bringing people back to the office and what that looked like. Obviously, we'd gone through a period of, you know, shutting half of the business down, so it's hospitality, shifting our content on the media side. So we had to look at cost saving as well. So one easy way for us to save some money was to downsize our office. And to downsize our office, it meant that we couldn't have people in every day. So we made a very conscious decision that moving forward, we would have a much smaller office, only ask people to come in 2 or 3 days a week. And that, of course, was done in conjunction with what employees wanted. So we surveyed, we said, look, we're returning to the office. What do people want to do? Do you want to, because people love working from home. Like some people love, you know, not having to do the commute anymore, saving that time. You know, for some people commuting into London, it's, you know, a good couple of hours every day. So to save that time where you could just be more productive at work, obviously very popular. So like I say, we did surveys, we looked at productivity hadn't gone down from having people work at home. So again, that was really key. So we decided that we were going to adopt a hybrid model and, like I say, have people in 2 or 3 times a week. Because we made that decision, we obviously had to change the purpose of the office. So the purpose of the office wasn't anymore to come in and do your day job and spend all day in meetings. It was to collaborate. So you came to the office to see your team members, to spend time with people face to face, you know, something we hadn't been able to do for such a long time. It wasn't to come in and sit in a meeting room and be on video calls all day long. We just had to change that thinking. We also had to manage numbers in the office. Before, we had a lovely, very spacious office where it didn't really matter who was coming in because we always had enough space.
Yeah.
This much smaller office, we can only have 75% of our workforce in there. So we had to introduce some technology, it's actually called Envoy, where we could monitor how many people were coming in, and we could make sure that we had asked, done relevant health and safety checks.
Is that from the government regulation that you have to do 75%?
No. That was just our, to begin with, there were social distancing guidelines.
Yeah.
So we had to ensure that, everyone could be 2 meters apart, everyone could sit somewhere where there was a desk in between them.
Okay, got it. So the distance between the desk.
Yeah. So we did, when we first went back to the office, or when we first moved to the much smaller office, we had a 50% capacity because we had to make sure we could have the social distancing measures in place. And like I say, we use this Envoy app to monitor that. So people would register the days that they wanted to go in. If it got to 50% capacity, then you got a message saying you can't come in today. All the desks have been booked. So
if I come to the office, I can't get in.
Yeah. Well, that was the problem. We kept having to say to people, look, we don't want you to be disappointed and turn up at the office and you don't have a desk because you haven't signed in or scheduled your visit. And so that took some time for people to get used to. And also we needed that record of who was in the office for COVID reasons as well. So if anyone tested positive in the office, we then had a list of who was in and we could contact them and say, look.
So you have to do a test before you get into the office as well. Oh, no.
No. So there's no set rules basically. The government has pretty much left it up to companies to do what they see fit. We have decided to, as long as everyone is double vaccinated, they can come to the office.
Got it.
No issue. If you're not double vaccinated, then we want you to do a test before coming in. So that's the policy we've adopted right now. It may change over time, but that's kind of what we went for. We obviously want to encourage people to get the vaccine where they can to protect those that can't. So the technology and having this app, on everyone's phones, was really, really important in helping us manage this shift to this hybrid model of working. And then team collaboration is the really key feature now. So we have certain teams who have designated days now. So, Tech Tuesdays, for example, where the tech team will come in on a Tuesday, the commercial team tend to come in on Mondays and Thursdays. If we communicate that, then other teams, particularly the support functions, HR, finance, they know which days make sense for them to go in and actually see the people that they need to talk to. So we've had great feedback about adopting this model. Lots of businesses in the UK are doing hybrid models now. People ask, do we think this is here for the long term? Who knows? I think it's definitely here for a good few years. I mean, people love the flexibility, like I said, in our business anyway, they love the flexibility. People have missed the office. People do like to go in and see people. So I definitely think this hybrid approach of having both available to you has just worked so well, which leads me on to the next point of engagement. So I feel like we have a very engaged team right now, where it's been so tough over the last year, knowing, when restrictions are going to be eased, when we can kind of start getting back to normal in terms of what we're reviewing, opening up the markets. And now that we're kind of in a good place or a better place, I should say, where, things are open and we can be in the office again. Keeping that flexibility, I think, has really, really engaged people, because they feel like they have some control over how they run their working life now. When people were locked down, they saw some good benefits because they had the work-life balance. There was no commuting, obviously. They spent more time with their family because no commuting, that kind of thing. don't get me wrong, like there was, you know, it was horrendous doing homeschooling and that kind of thing. But it kind of brought this new element to everyone's lives that they had more time at home. And I think people have liked keeping some of that. So,
and I think one thing that I found is the same data as you in Thailand. Is a lot of company in Thailand, productivity is rising up when people work from home.
Yeah,
I think that when you say that as a UK companies, I think that probably I assume it's going to be a worldwide trend that we can see the productivity. You spend so much time on traffic to get to work, but that 2 hours could change your sales profit, could change your productivity. So I think that would be a new trend that a lot of companies will consider to do remote work more and more, even I think the pandemic is done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, that was one of the big reasons that we decided to adopt a hybrid model, because we didn't see productivity go down. Mm-hmm. I mean, you will always get the odd team member who just cannot motivate themselves from home, and they need that office environment. And again, this works well because they could go into the office every day if they wanted. We're not saying you can only come in 2 or 3 days a week. The office is there. You can go in every day if that works for you better, as long as you book your space. But
I have a question. If as your HR director for Time Out, and you come up with your team come up with the idea of thinking of hybrid model, is this becoming a trend in the UK yet to doing this stuff?
Yes, absolutely. It's very much, there's very few businesses that aren't doing hybrid model. And I think particularly where the UK has gone into lockdown, out of lockdown, into lockdown, out of lockdown, some offices just haven't opened at all. But where this year, from I think it was July now, the restrictions started to disappear, that's when people or more businesses in the UK have decided to adopt this model, because restrictions have disappeared. So there's no reason not to go back to the office, but understanding that people have liked that flexibility of working from home. So, and the problem is, if you don't have that, it's not even adopting a hybrid model, but having the option of working from home or from the office, it's becoming like a retention tool. So if you're looking for a new role, most people are looking for that flexibility. So if your company isn't offering that, or is insisting that people are going back to the office, you're probably less likely to get as many candidates as you would hope, because it's become so important for people. And like I say, there are some who really don't like the kind of isolation at home.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the choice is great, because it just makes you look like an employer that offers flexibility, really.
So that means in the like what it calls like independence, individual contributor is more likely to be one of the factor of employment that we're looking at in the UK now. Yeah,
definitely, definitely. So this, I mean, there's obviously some key things that you have to think about as an employer if you are adopting this model. New starters, we have to think very carefully about how we onboard people, because they're not necessarily having that team around them every day, all day long training. So we have to have very structured onboarding to ensure that they are integrating into the team in the right way, learning everything that they need, knowing how to ask questions. So we've had to put some thought into that. And also our company comms, we've had to address how we do that. And our CEO was very good early on in lockdown, just switching everything to video. So he started doing recorded video messages and sending them out on a frequent basis, just kind of giving updates of what we were doing, checking in that people are okay, the empathy of the situation. But yeah, there's certain things that you have to rethink if you're going to adopt a hybrid model, because it's really hard to start somewhere new and never see your colleagues. So making sure you're balancing that and being contactable, making sure there's time when you're all in the office. You have to have that structure for that new person.
Yeah.
And then the last point I just wanted to talk about was, I kind of touched on it a little bit there in terms of, it's kind of an employee's market right now, because lots of people have taken the time over lockdown and the pandemic to think about what's really important to them. And now we're seeing this great resignation where lots of people have just said, you know what, this isn't for me anymore. I'm going to go and, something that I'm really passionate about. And I wasn't really passionate about my role. And this isn't just a UK thing. Lots of countries are seeing this, but people are, life's too short. It's kind of thinking about, what do I want to spend my time doing? And so, like I say, to keep people engaged and them not to want to rethink, I would go back to having this flexibility and, a kind of working environment that's really flexible for individuals works well, I think.
Yeah, I think there's when you go through about the situation in the UK right now, I can see that it's totally changed when I was there a couple of years ago, and it's because the pandemic changed everyone mindset, think about yourself more, and you say great resignation. It's become, I don't want to say it's a trend, but it is kind of like a trend for the employee to think about themselves. Why don't we become the open our own shop or own business, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, but because when you go to the office every single day before, you don't have time to think about it because you come, you burn out your energy already with your daily work, daily routine at the office, but now you stay home, you have more time to reflect yourself as well. So
you just wouldn't think it was possible. You just wouldn't kind of allow yourself to go there, because you just think, I'm going into the office every day. You kind of get stuck in this routine.
Yeah.
And the pandemic's given us all time to think.
Right. So I think you also want to talk about the way to managing a team, a global team, and especially in this pandemic situation. So I think it's like you said before, about trust from the leaders is really important, and also the employee have how to make not only the leaders to trust the employee, but also the employee how to make your manager trust you as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you often thought about managing a global team was where the remoteness came in, because you would be maybe managing in the UK, but you might have someone who was working in Singapore, in the US, across Europe, wider Europe, and they would obviously always be remote. Whereas now, kind of managers are having to deal with remoteness, even if they don't manage people in other countries. So that kind of, there's things to be learned from global managers there. But I guess the main things are making sure you have that check-in. So being very conscious of time zones. It's not always appropriate to schedule a meeting at midday on a Friday, because that could be leading into someone's weekend. In Dubai, we have a team in Dubai. They don't, Friday is a holiday, is part of the weekend. So it's just making sure you understand culturally what the makeup of the week is like, but also, like I say, time zones. And I always found that sometimes people would be really annoyed if they're being invited to a meeting and they wouldn't acknowledge the time that it was in that person's country. They would always refer to their country. And it's a very simple thing, just to show that you're appreciating that they are somewhere else, and you're thinking about what time it is for them. And then people, you get that little bit of flexibility where, you may do an early meeting to accommodate them, and then they'll be happy to stay on a bit later to accommodate you. But just having that awareness of not everyone is on the same clock kind of thing. But essentially having those check-ins and having them regularly to ensure that I'm not losing any connection with someone that's remote from you. everyone wants to know what they're working towards. So, you know, being united around what the vision or the purpose of your team is, or, you know, maybe the company as a whole, is really important as well. And making sure that everyone understands, everyone knows what part they play in that. No matter where they are, they're all still really important. Sometimes you find that people feel that if they're not in the head office, they're not as important, and you can only be successful if you're in the head office. That shouldn't be the case, and it's not the case. I think, you know, at TripAdvisor, we had a very strong core team in the London office. That wasn't head office. The head office was in Boston. But you know, in other countries, where there's smaller teams, they may feel like, oh, you know, we don't have a big team here, we're not as important. So we need to try and address that as well. I think Time Out is slightly different because we are all about cities and local expertise in cities. I think everyone feels the importance that they have in delivering the content that we give to our audience.
How many offices for Time Out now?
Say that again, sorry.
How many offices for Time Out now?
So we have, well, so on the media side, we have a team in the US, a team in Singapore, Hong Kong, and then in Europe, we obviously have the UK, Portugal, Spain, and France. That is the kind of owned and operated business. We have a number of franchises. Yes, we have a number of franchises, but those are where we have our employees. So Time Out does operate a franchise model as well. On the market side, it's slightly different. We have markets in the US, but we also have one in Montreal in Canada. As I mentioned, we have one in Dubai. We have one in Lisbon. And that's all of them for now. More in the pipeline. But yeah, so we have a big global spread, but because of what we do, what our product is, it's very key that we have people in those places, because they have the knowledge. You know, for some businesses, you can center people in one place, and it, you know, it doesn't really matter whether you have people in different cities or not. I think it all depends on what your product is, really. So yeah, I would also, just going back to kind of managing global teams, just making sure that everyone feels they're as important. So it kind of links back to the head office point. You know, you shouldn't be tasking the same people with key projects because they're based in the headquarters. You know, you should try and spread that responsibility so everyone feels involved, and that there's not this, you know, skew towards your location putting you in better stead than anyone else. The next point I would say is being empathetic to people, you know, trying to understand what's important to people, why they're working for you, that kind of thing will help, obviously, for you to retain them and help with productivity as well. You know, try to get to know people. What outside of their work life. I think a lot of that during the pandemic has, you know, you're in people's front rooms, so to speak. So it's kind of been brought to you. And so it has created a lot more of those personal relationships. I feel like in our business now, so many people know what people's kids are called, and, you know, who's in their household. Whereas before, if you're just going to the office every day, you wouldn't necessarily know. And you might not feel comfortable to ask, whereas this is kind of like put it into people's daily working because it's there, it's in front of them. But I think it's it's being able to talk about, you know, someone's personal world is a great tool of bringing you together and building that relationship. Obviously, if they're comfortable to do that, not everyone will be. And then obviously cultural differences. You know, some countries will be much more reserved than others. You know, the US, you know, very direct in their approach, doesn't necessarily go down that well, or you're not going to get a great response from someone in Japan, for example, because they're much more reserved. And I definitely saw that. One of my roles at TripAdvisor was supporting the B2B side of the business. And we had sales teams in, oh my God, so many different countries.
Yeah.
And I just remember having to deal with an employee relations issue in Japan.
Yeah.
They are managed by an American manager, and it just, the appreciation of the different culture wasn't being read very well. And so there was a lot of coaching that we had to do to try and smooth that out. So, being aware, communication is so key, and just getting that communication right is very, very important. And then finally, I would say, utilize technology. One of the things that the pandemic has brought is that everyone is kind of used to video conferencing now, and are utilizing different versions of that, but also having those, chat messages where you can quickly ask a question, but also saying, I'm just, by the way, I might be uncontactable for, I don't know, 10 minutes, I've got to go and pick my child up from nursery, whatever it may be, but just having that kind of, just because you can't see them doesn't mean you can't have that kind of daily interaction. So utilizing those communication technology tools is really, really key as well. And I think, people, I know there was a bit of Zoom fatigue to begin with, but essentially it's great to jump on a video call rather than just having an email conversation. It brings much more to it. So making time for those is really, really important.
Right. And I have some quick question, like Anna, as you are leaders for looking so much change in your organization, how can you think, how can I say, like, it's difficult situation as pandemic is going on. How can you sure that you want to move into this direction and implement this in the global scale? I know it's difficult to say it's going to be 100%, but how can you decide this is going to be the right way we are going?
It's tough. It's really tough. I think it's key to see how your teams are responding. If they, like I say, at Time Out, it's worked really well in our response to how we've come out the other side of the pandemic. I think everyone's very happy with our new office, the location, the flexibility is really key. But I think, that's just our business. I think, like I say, people have to give the opportunity to hear employees' voice. So I would survey, get people's feedback. We do actually have, I'm talking very predominantly about London when I talk about the hybrid model. We actually have our New York team. We have got rid of the office in New York. So we now just have a remote team there. And I think they miss having the space to go to collaborate with their team members. So we are very conscious of that. And I think when the time is right, we will definitely get another office, but it will be smaller. We will probably have that, flexibility again of hybrid, working from home, going to the office. But every country, we have had to kind of, see what the government is saying, are there any restrictions there, and then apply what we think our teams want. And when I say what we think they want, it's because we normally survey to get their input on it. But it's tough. You can't always please everyone. But I think by having the hybrid model, you have that it kind of suits everyone. There are some people, like I say, that want to come in every day, and that's fine as long as there's a space and you've booked yourself in. That's fine. But it's hard to know, and who knows, in a few years' time it may all shift and everyone wants to be back in the office again, and then we have to look at our office space again and move somewhere bigger and all of this kind of thing. So communication is so key. Keeping that dialogue with your team members, what's working for them, what's not working for them, what do they need, are they clear on the vision, Are you being transparent in what you need them to deliver? I think are really, really key things.
And what do you see about the leadership trend in the UK now? If anyone want to be, I know there's so many layoff in so many industry in the UK, and if they have to get the new leaders to lead the company, what do you think is going to be the trend for the UK that this kind of leader is really needed in the industry?
Well, I think it's, again, it kind of links to what I was saying before. It's kind of understanding, navigating your way through the conversations, understanding what's important to people, and just having that communication, ensuring that what you are hearing is actually what's important to people, or what you want to deliver is being heard in the right way. So like I say, trying to navigate that the communication is right, it meets both needs, you're clear, there's a purpose, that kind of thing. And I think people skills is very important, particularly where we've had, mental health is on the impacts of mental health, I should say, are on the increase. They were already, but this obviously has made it even worse. So being able to be sensitive to people's well-being, how we can support, empathy, respect, that kind of thing, I think are really, really key.
Yeah. I can say that from what you just said, like it's no more leaders who come in and say, I need to do this now. It have to be someone that reflecting from the employee, because everyone is remote entire the country, right? So the reflection of your employee is really important for the new leaders nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you come in and you try and make too much of a change, you're going to start losing people. And obviously retention is key right now, because like I said, there's this big effect of the Great Resignation. People are leaving. It's hard to get people in because there's so much competition for, what's a good employer now. So I think you just need to be sensitive to what your people want, and what you can deliver, and being transparent in that.
And what is kind of like the hiring trend in the UK now? Is a lot of job hiring now, or still redundancy?
So there was a lot of redundancy, and I'm sure there will still be elements of it, but it's hard to hire. It can be hard to hire in some areas because there's lots of competition for certain roles. Tech is always really hard to hire in, and I think where we kind of had a tech team that already wanted to kind of have that flexibility of working from home, now we are offering it, and that's working for us, but so is everybody else. So how do we ensure they don't move on? But if they do, it's really hard to get people in and try and because there's so many factors now. It's not just the role, it's what does the company offer for this, mental health, flexibility, hybrid working, all these other elements that we didn't really just kind of shout about in the past because we didn't need to, but now they're really important because that's what's important to people. I think that's shifted. But yeah, some areas are really, hospitality is so hard. Some people are moving away from hospitality because it's proven to be unstable. So lots of people lost their jobs because that's the industry that they worked in, and now they're kind of thinking, well, do I want to go back and work in that sector again? And if I do, I want to be paid more. So there's a big shift in our markets business where we're it's really hard to hire on the levels that we were before. And of course, we've also had Brexit, which so we've lost a lot of people that were working in the hospitality industry anyway, because they no longer have the right to work, that kind of thing. So the whole thing has made hiring really hard. But like I say, I think it's now that that kind of broader, rounder picture of what an employer can offer an employee to work with them. And obviously vision and purpose is really key. And, you know, the kind of integrity of the company as well.
Definitely, totally agree with that. Myself, when I was with TripAdvisor in the UK, and as I said before, I worked with you for quite a number of years, and I can see that there is so many people asking me as well, like how can you get there, and what do you think to work in the UK? What the situation like? I was the head of creative for TripAdvisor, so I managed a global team as well in Singapore, in the US, in London, and some in Southeast Asia. So that is a really good experience for me. As a Thai person who worked in the UK for 10 years, more than 10 years, and I can see that this city and this country that really unique later than another country. So the first thing I want to point out to everyone is like, you have to understanding the multicultural environment, like Anna said before, as London is not only for British people nowadays. I think you mentioned before about the cultural as well, because first time when I was in the UK, please don't call me in the afternoon of Friday. Yeah, most people in the UK went to the pub, and they still chat about work, but they change the environment, they change the feel. I don't, maybe I was wrong that it's kind of like you want to start your weekend early with the colleague, you know, not just like finish your job and go back home and then my weekend start with my family early. So that's what I feel, and I don't get that why people love to talk about work in pub. I don't get it at the beginning, like why people keep standing outside the pub and talk about work. Why don't they just bring in the office and just sit there? But of course, it's more socialized. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that it's so true. But, you know, TripAdvisor provided that environment for us because they had a drinks fridge up on the top floor of the office, so everyone was kind of encouraged to go and be sociable, you know. And I think, you know, yeah, the Brits do like to have a drink, and yes, Friday afternoon is definitely kind of, look, we're coming into the weekend, we've had a tough week, let's kind of you know, lay it on the line to our colleagues and share. And it helps if your workplace can offer that to you, which TripAdvisor definitely did. And it was great, and people loved it. It was so popular. And I think that's one of the big things that people missed during lockdown, is that you lost that social element. And so having those regular check-ins was so key. But yeah, I think it probably does seem quite strange looking in, but yeah, let's go and talk about work, but in a different environment, have a drink as well.
Yeah, I think that's worked really well, because like I say, if any Thai people want to work in the UK, first you have to understanding the multicultural environment, and this type of the culture change. That if I be myself as when I was in Thailand, I would just keep working until 7 p.m. alone, because no one in the office anymore, in the pub. So I mean, I'm not gonna get a chance to know anyone else. And the chance when I have a drink with them and keep talking about work is more open up their mind, I think, and get you like break the ice with them as well in some point. And I think that understanding the multicultural environment is very important for not only Thai, but anyone who want to work in the UK. And I think that it's really important. Like you say, that maybe in Dubai probably different way, maybe in Germany it would be different way as well, that don't call me on Saturday at all or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but and to the next point, I want to highlight also about balancing your freedom and professional. In Asia, you mentioned Japan before, and especially Japanese people, they work really hard, and I'd say that they have professionalism is really high, and they are really professional. But the thing also in the Western world, in the UK, we also respect your work-life balance, right? And you also have to punctuality as well. Not, it doesn't mean that we allow you to come in anytime and finish work anytime, but okay, we just look, I have to be professional enough. But also they give you a lot of freedom as well. Like in TripAdvisor, we have a pool table, we have a game station, Xbox, we have a pub in the office, we have so many play area, especially in the head office in the US. So I think that's kind of thing that they give you freedom, they give you your space for your entertainment, but also they expect your professional come to work as well. So I think this kind of like, I can see a lot of people really addict with this kind of freedom, and they start to have less professionalism in themselves. So I think that kind of like you have to make sure that you're balancing yourself well enough, and of course we want to have a good result. A lot of leaders and manager or CEO looking for your driving result rather than your how many hours you work or something like that. But if you unbalancing that perfectly, it would be difficult for your situation as well. Is that the same in time out as well, that you have quite a lot of freedom for the employee?
Yeah, we also had a ping pong table at one point. There was, when I first joined, there were Nerf guns everywhere. You know, quite random, but it's something the tech team like to just do. And so yeah, you have these kind of again, social perks, I guess, that again, it's to do with retention. You know, we want people to feel that they can have a bit of downtime at work, step away from their desk, and then, you know, for however long, 10 minutes, whatever, and then go back and kind of refocus again. But yeah, it's a very common theme now that people want, or was, I mean, we don't have as many of those things anymore in our new office because people aren't there as often, but we do still have a bar. So there's still an element of, you know, on a Thursday night, we'll have some drinks for whoever's there. But yeah, it's really important to have that social connection and like you say, joining in. So people want to find it easier sometimes to kind of get to know people if it's in that more relaxed environment, either playing a game or having a drink or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And another thing that I think it would be nice to talk about is, for myself, about knowing your leadership skill. As I want to say it because if you are Thai and you want to work abroad, not only in the UK, you need to know your strength. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have that strength, it doesn't mean you cannot work in that place. But you have to know what is needed in the market for the leadership skill. As if you want to be a leader in, like say, in the UK, for me, who graduated from the Thai university and work in the UK, no one gonna know Thai university, right? And that is the skill that I see is really important for me, and it worked really well for me, is storytelling. The first interview with my previous manager, I tell him my own story, how can I come to the UK, and what's my ambition, who I am, what I like to do. And when I work with Volvo, Nestle in the UK before I joined TripAdvisor, I just tell, like I use storytelling technique and to get that person who interviewed me understand me more. And I think that's kind of like a soft skill that you really need if you want to work abroad, especially like maybe even you, and if you want to work in Japan, you maybe have to use this as well to.
Yeah, I think people want a connection.
Yeah,
they want to try and get a connection with someone, so if they know a bit more about you, they can understand you a bit more and relate. So that's really key.
Yeah, and a leadership skill can help you, can support you to your goals that you want to do. So I think I just put storytelling because I use that a lot as a leader in the UK. But you guys who are in this room, maybe you can use any technique or any skills that you think is good for you. And also another thing I want to mention is that think global and act local. Like you said before, Anna, when we work with different country people, there are so many culture, they have so many touch points. One time, I remember when I'm mentoring my employee in my team, I use kind of like a Thai technique, because in Thailand, we always say like, oh, you are my brother, you're my sister. You know, it's kind of like part of a family. And in the Western world, we're not going to say that. It's a bit awkward, I would say. But so many times I talk with my ex-manager, like, oh, I just want to talk with you like my brother because I have something really important. Or I talk with my own employee as well, like, okay, I can spot something that he has something in mind, but he doesn't want to say it yet. And I can spot that. And I can just ask him like, you know what, I'm not your manager anymore. Just talk to me as I'm your friend and your brother. And he come out with everything. And now I understand what happening to him. And he said, please don't tell anyone. I don't want you to let anyone know this. And it's like his secret, that why his performance is become lower than before, because he has some depression or something like that. And I can feel that sometimes when I do something like a local that I do in Thailand, it's really helpful as well in even different culture. But if you use
Yeah, I think that's a great tip.
Yeah, and that I think and also and the last thing I think that Thai people need to change is to change mindset about themselves, because if they're not gonna change about who they are, what they're gonna do in the UK, it's quite difficult for them to work in the UK, I think. And even somewhere in the world, you have to think and change your mindset first that you can do it. And it's not your country, it's not your language, but definitely if the company hire you, you're good enough. And whoever you're going to work with, that's going to be your support, that's going to be your colleagues that are going to work together and walk together with you. Don't be afraid to work with someone from another country, some different languages that you feel like, it's going to be tough for me. No, you have to change your mindset that you get chance, do the best you can do. They believe you, then you have to believe yourself. So I think this would be a top tip for me for Thai people who want to work in the UK. And the last question, and I just want to know more about what do you think about as you HR director, and I know you lead I know you for a while, and you lead so many HR team in different companies. In your opinion, what will be essential for today and tomorrow leader in order to lead the new era?
I think definitely communication. I feel like I've spoken about it a lot, but having someone that can communicate to everyone in their team at the right level, at the right time, making sure they get that check-in happening if they're remote, ensuring that there's some team collaboration built in there, whether that's in the office or you're going to somewhere external to just get together. I think that's really key. Having a vision, a purpose, why are we here, what's everyone's part in that vision, and being transparent and helping to kind of build that relationship, build the trust, and get the most out of people. I think those are the key things for a top leader. But I would say communication is up there. You have to be able to communicate with people so that they know they can communicate with you, and they know that what you want from them.
Right. Cool, Anna. I think we learned a lot from you about the UK trend, about the leadership skills that and what's happening in the UK right now, because I know that there's so many things going on in this world now. And yeah, thank you for your time so much. I think everyone in this room that listen to us would have so many questions. If you have any question, please put your message in the inbox. We will answer this after this. And thank you so much, Anna. Thank you again for joining our section in the United Kingdom. and
For
hopefully,
having me. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone wants to send through.
all right, cool. I see you later.
Thank you.